Phoebe was homeless, and imagine the entire group. Phoebe Buffet might not just be quirky, she might be the only one in the show living in actual reality. This theory says the entire Friends sitcom is Phoebe's coping hallucination while she's homeless, watching the perfect group through the Central Perk window. It fits disturbingly well. Phoebe's worldview never matches the others. While they stress about breakups and rent, she talks casually about mugging people, living on the streets, stabbing a cop, or watching her mother die. Trauma delivered like a lullaby. But contrast that with the group, 6 ridiculously attractive 20-somethings, living in massive Manhattan apartments on tiny salaries, falling in and out of love without real consequences. That's not real life. That's fantasy life. The exact fantasy a homeless teen would cling to. Phoebe always acts like an outsider looking in. She never fully integrates emotionally into the group. She comments on them like a viewer. She even jokes she watches people through windows for entertainment. Exactly how she would observe the Friends group if she lived on the street outside Central Perk. And the darkest detail? The series ends with Rachel, Monica, Ross, Chandler, Joey all achieving closure. But Phoebe doesn't. No big arc, no final lesson, no wrapped up life. Because fantasies don't end, they reset. Fans say Friends isn't a sitcom. It's Phoebe imagining the life she wishes she had. Rachel dreamed the entire show after running from her wedding. This theory isn't just popular, it's chillingly plausible. It argues that everything in Friends is Rachel's dream after she flees her wedding in the pilot episode. Look at the evidence. Rachel leaves Barry, panics, starts a brand new life instantly with no emotional backlash. Within days, she has an entire friend circle, a free place to live, a job she magically keeps despite incompetence, and a romance arc where the high school nerd she ignored becomes her soulmate. It's too clean, too fairy tale, too convenient. The biggest hint sits right in front of us. The season 4 DVD cover. Rachel is the only one awake while the rest sleep around her. Fans took this as a deliberate message. This is her dream. Rachel becomes the center of every major plotline. Her job arcs, her love arcs, her breakups, her baby, her emotional growth. She's not just the protagonist. She's the dreamer. The finale then becomes symbolic. She gets off the plane, but maybe she never got on one. She simply wakes up from the fantasy she created to escape the guilt of walking out on Barry. Friends becomes the perfect life she imagined at the moment she needed it most. They're all inside a psychiatric ward, each with a disorder. On the surface, Friends is a goofy sitcom. Underneath, its structure screams psychological confinement. The theory says all 6 friends live inside a psychiatric institution, and each one represents a textbook mental health disorder. Monica, OCD. Her cleaning obsession, need for control, fear of chaos, and strict rituals go way beyond quirky. Their symptoms: Chandler, anxiety and childhood trauma, hypersarcasm, emotional repression, commitment issues, use of humor as a shield, trauma responses everywhere. Ross, narcissistic obsessed academic. He needs to win, needs to be right, needs validation. His entire identity collapses whenever he loses control. Rachel, borderline identity and dependency. She reinvents herself constantly, attaches to the group instantly, and panics at abandonment. Joey, dissociation and emotional simplicity. His dumbness feels more like an emotional detachment response, not lack of intelligence. Phoebe, PTSD. Her trauma history speaks for itself. The entire Friends universe takes place in only a handful of sets. The institution metaphor. Their world barely expands because mentally, they never leave the facility. And the couch at Central Perk? Their group therapy spot. Fans argue Friends is a feel-good version of 6 damaged people living in a safe, controlled environment. The only place they can function. Joey and Phoebe were secretly hooking up the entire time. This theory isn't just fan fiction. It's actually supported by the actors and tons of hidden moments. Matt LeBlanc once admitted he and Lisa Kudrow pitched the idea that Joey and Phoebe had been secretly hooking up off-screen for years. Every time someone enters a room unexpectedly, Joey and Phoebe look suspicious. They make flirtatious jokes that sound too natural. They share more physical closeness than anyone except Ross Rachel. Key moments add fuel. Phoebe seduces Joey effortlessly multiple times, and he responds instantly. When Joey pretends to practice kissing Phoebe, it looks way too comfortable. In season 7, Phoebe says Joey is the best sex of her life, in a hypothetical, but her tone sounds like experience. Joey gets defensive when Phoebe dates others, but never openly admits why. Buffet. Writers later laughed that if the show revealed a hidden couple, it would 100% be Joey and Phoebe. The theory says they didn't want a relationship. They just used each other for comfort, affection, and stress relief off-screen while keeping it private from the group. And looking back, the chemistry was always there, just disguised under jokes and chaos. Monica is not Jack's biological daughter. This theory flips the entire Geller family dynamic on its head. And once you see the clues, it becomes impossible to unsee. Monica isn't just the unfavored child. She's treated like she isn't Jack's child at all. Judy worships Ross. Every chance she gets, she dismisses Monica's achievements, mocks her childhood struggles, or openly blames her for things she didn't do. But the key moment, the one fans highlight, is when Jack confesses he used Monica's childhood boxes as insulation. Not Ross's, only Monica's. Jack, usually the more loving parent, treats Monica differently when Judy is around. It feels like he's covering guilt, not cruelty. Look at Judy's most iconic line. We may not have wanted to have her, but we loved her once she came out. It's too sharp, too strangely phrased, and delivered with resentment, not maternal warmth. The theory argues Monica was conceived during a rough patch in the Gellers' marriage. Jack may not be the father. Judy resents Monica because she's a living reminder of that mistake. This explains why Ross gets everything, why Monica gets nothing, why the Gellers rewrite history to favor Ross, why Monica battles insecurity her entire life, why Judy hesitates to show pride. Even after Monica becomes successful, fans aren't saying Monica was adopted. They're saying she's the child Judy never wanted and Jack never intended. It reframes the Gellers not as a quirky family, but a deeply broken one hiding a lifelong secret. Chandler eventually created Riverdale. This theory sounds wild until you realize the evidence is canon-level strong. Chandler Bing always wanted to be a writer, not a data processor. He jokes about it constantly, writes short stories, pitches ideas, and ends up pursuing advertising, where he finally succeeds through creativity. So, where does Riverdale come into the picture? Friends references Archie comics multiple times. Chandler reads Archie. Phoebe mentions Jughead. Joey says his agents rejected him for the Archie job. These aren't random Easter eggs. They're direct universe connections. Now here's the kicker. The creator of Riverdale, Roberto Aguirre Sacasa, admitted the show includes sitcom-style banter inspired by Friends. And fans notice something strange. Chandler's humor is identical to Jughead's narration. Sarcasm, meta-commentary, dark comedy wrapped in emotional trauma. Even Chandler's childhood storyline, broken home, abusive parents, identity issues, mirrors Jughead's character blueprint. The theory says Chandler, after finally finding confidence in advertising, transitions into scriptwriting and eventually writes the gritty, twisted version of the childhood comics he used to read. He finally gets the creative life he always hinted at. Not Chandler the joke machine, Chandler the storyteller. Monica and Joey were addicts covering their struggles with humor. This theory isn't comedy, it's psychological. Fans argue Monica and Joey's behavior matches the patterns of recovering addicts hiding their struggles behind jokes and routine. Start with Monica. Her personality didn't magically change from obese teen to hyper-competitive chef with militant cleaning standards. Her sudden need for perfection, every towel labeled, every surface spotless, every object symmetrically placed, screams obsessive self-regulation. It's not quirky. It's someone terrified of losing control again. And Joey, his dumbness feels inconsistent. Sometimes he's sharp. Sometimes he's vacant. Sometimes he has emotional clarity. Sometimes he's zoned out like his mind is fog. Fans point to his constant memory lapses, impulsive decisions, unstable emotions, and inability to keep track of responsibilities. It mirrors someone who's masking dependency issues with charm and humor. And look at their immediate connection. Monica cooks for Joey constantly. Joey hangs out in Monica's apartment like it's rehab energy. Calm, structured, safe. They almost feel like two people who understand each other's addictions without saying it aloud. This theory doesn't mock them. It explains them. Monica's perfectionism isn't a personality trait. It's control. Joey's goofiness isn't innocence. It's escape. Together, they function like survivors who silently recognize each other's darkness. Phoebe is a secret genius pretending to be strange. This theory is beloved because it doesn't insult Phoebe. It elevates her. Fans believe Phoebe Buffet is the smartest person in the group and intentionally plays dumb to avoid emotional entanglement, judgment, and expectations. Look at the evidence. She speaks multiple languages. She taught herself guitar. She can read people instantly. She consistently outsmarts Ross, even in arguments about his field. Her ditzy moments are always deliberate. Comedic shields, not genuine confusion. Phoebe's trauma-trained intelligence allows her to read body language with surgical accuracy. She always knows when someone is lying, hurting, scheming, or hiding feelings. Monica is emotional. Rachel is reactive. Ross is delusional. Chandler is defensive. Joey is sweet but simple. But Phoebe, she's the only one who seems to understand everyone. She manipulates events for the group's benefit. She pushes Mike and the group at the right times. She perceives relationship cracks before anyone else. She uses humor to neutralize emotional tension. She protects her mental health by playing eccentric. Her weirdness becomes armor. Her oddness becomes camouflage. The theory says Phoebe survived because she's brilliant. Just brilliant enough to hide it. Gunther secretly owned Central Perk. Gunther isn't just the weird blonde barista with a crush on Rachel. Fans believe he was actually the owner of Central Perk. And once you track his behavior, it becomes almost undeniable. Think about it. He's never supervised. He never gets scolded. He hires and fires at will. He works impossible hours no employee would tolerate. And he randomly appears everywhere in the shop, managing everything without ever answering to a boss. There is no manager above him, no owner referenced, no shifts, no staff meetings. It's like the writers intentionally erased management because Gunther was management. How does a regular barista afford New York rent? How does he survive on minimum wage while pouring his entire life into a failing cafe? Why does he never quit, despite clearly hating his job when Rachel leaves? Because it's his cafe. He doesn't leave because he's not an employee. He's invested. His bizarre obsession with Rachel also fits better when you consider he'd have the financial stability and authority of ownership. That's why he confidently offers Rachel a full-time job after she quit Ralph Lauren, something no barista could do. Gunther isn't a background character. He's the silent puppeteer who built Central Perk around the group without ever needing the spotlight. Ross lost custody of Ben. That's why Ben completely disappears. Fans have always noticed something deeply off about Ben's storyline. Ross's son is heavily featured in the early seasons, then suddenly vanishes as if he never existed. It's not a continuity error. It feels like a cover-up. The theory says Ross gradually lost custody of Ben due to his own instability, the divorces, the emotional breakdowns, the constant relationship chaos, and his chronic lack of presence. Courts don't love dads who yell, "We were on a break," as a defense mechanism. Ben disappears the moment Ross's life becomes more erratic, and Rachel becomes the focal point. He never appears during Emma's birth. He never meets his half-sister. He's not mentioned in Ross's big emotional arcs. It's as though the writers intentionally phased Ben out to avoid addressing the custody storyline. And the darkest part? There is a scene where Ross admits he's scared of losing Ben, but the show never returns to that fear. Fans argue that's because the worst-case scenario quietly happened off-screen. Ben didn't vanish. Ross just wasn't in his life anymore. The entire show is Rachel's future. Flashback after getting off the plane. This theory reframes the entire show as a collection of memories told by Rachel years after her life with Ross stabilized, not as real-time events. The clue is hidden in plain sight. Every episode title is the one where that's how people tell stories decades later. But here's the deeper part. The finale makes it obvious. Rachel leaves her dream job in Paris, returns to Ross, and then the screen cuts. We never see how their life unfolds, how they raise Emma, or how they heal. Because we're not watching the present. We're watching Rachel retell everything years later. This explains why the group never ages realistically, why apartments remain magically affordable, why events are exaggerated for comedic effect, why stories repeat like memories, not reality, why coincidences stack up like a highlight reel. Rachel in her future is recounting the most dramatic, funniest, and most emotional moments of her youth. Not a perfect timeline. It's nostalgia, not documentary, and it makes the entire show feel like a scrapbook being narrated long after the chaos ends. Friends becomes the story Rachel tells herself about the years when everything in her life was changing. Friends exists in the same universe as The Fresh Prince. Will Smith is canon. This isn't random. It's one of the most shockingly supported sitcom cross theories out there. Will Smith, the actor himself, shows up as Will Smith on the same NBC eras that Friends aired in. Meanwhile, in Friends Season 1, Chandler references that Will Smith kid, meaning the character is canon inside their universe. But it goes deeper. Both shows shows exist in the same NBC crossover timeline. We know this because characters from one sitcom often exist in others through direct jokes, reference realities, and celebrity cameos that aren't just Easter eggs. They confirm shared continuity. Fans even tracked a bizarre parallel. In Fresh Prince, Will moves from Philadelphia to California to escape violence. In Friends, the Gunther waltzing through life episode references a barista from Philly, believed to be a nod to Will's background. But here's the crazy part. Joey literally auditions for a show in universe that matches Fresh Prince's production company. He's treated like he's crossing into another NBC property. The theory says Friends doesn't just share a universe with Will, it shares the same timeline, the same Hollywood, the same New York, the same entertainment world. It's not that Friends copied Fresh Prince, it's that they coexist in the same comedic multiverse. And once you accept that, every cameo becomes canon, and Friends becomes just one neighborhood in a massive sitcom universe.